Hey everybody, welcome to episode 54 of Pealed Back's LiveCast Conversations With. As always, I'm your host, Gene Bernier, the Enjoyment Coach, and today my guest is Tom Lahdenranta. Tom is a husband and a father of three. He's an endurance athlete, healthy living advocate, and a coach, but he wasn't always this way. At one point in his life, Tom weighed 250 pounds and was eating fast food every day. Tom has been a construction worker, a railway conductor, a locomotive engineer, an accountant, and most recently a coach and consultant. 3 years ago, after the birth of his youngest daughter, Tom made a dramatic life change. He realized that if he stayed on the path he was, he would look back on his life with regret and disappointment because he would not have lived up to his full potential. Tom ignited a fire within himself that enabled him to transform his mindset and health and achieve goals he never thought possible. Through this, Tom realized the power that every one of us has inside of ourselves is to change our lives for the better. Since then, he has made it his mission in life to help others rediscover the power in themselves so they can unlock their full potential and create a life that makes them excited to wake up every day. Tom, my words cannot do you full justice, my friend.
Well, you're way too kind, Gene. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. And I got to say, before we move on, that intro music that you have got me pumped up. It was awesome.
No, that's the hope, right? Like I don't think you can see me, but I'm doing like a little dance behind the scenes just to get going. So it's funny to watch the different people in the green room getting ready with it. So
cool.
So from 250 pounds to a lot of different roles to now where you are today, like tell us a little bit more about that journey. Unpack rediscovering that excitement within yourself.
Yeah, so I'll kind of fast forward through the early stuff because that 250-pound version of me goes back a ways. I was 20 years old and, you know, just like, I guess a typical young guy in a lot of ways, right? Addicted to video games, watching a lot of television, professional sports. What I tell people is I was distracting myself from reality. I was just, you know, I didn't really have a lot of purpose in my life. I didn't really have a lot of drive or ambition. And so there's actually a moment, I wasn't going to jump into the story, but there was an event that happened when I was just around 20 years old that really changed my life. And I remember I actually went on a hunting trip in the Kootenays with my two older cousins. And I'm this guy, my cousins were also kind of like this, that, you know, we're all out of shape and unhealthy and not driven. And I went on this trip and I ended up going on a hiking outing up a big mountain out in the wilderness near Grand Forks, BC. And I remember climbing up to the top of this mountain and just bushwhacking up there, right? Like there's no trail, just deciding on a whim to go up this thing and getting to the top, right? After struggling and sweating, here I am like totally out of shape, struggling to get up here, but enjoying it, right? Enjoying being out in nature, enjoying pushing myself, and then getting to the top and looking out at the view, 360 degrees everywhere, and just feeling this amazing feeling of accomplishment and this, you know, I guess belief in myself that I could do things that I never knew I could do. And I remember looking around and feeling that in that moment that I was going to change my life, that I was no longer going to be this out of shape guy who had no ambition. I was going to change my life. And looking back on that, it was a pivotal moment in my life. And I remember changing a lot of things, and I ended up changing my health. You know, it started off pretty basic, right? And I try to tell people, it's not like these things don't happen overnight, these changes for people. And, you know, it was a, you know, combination of small changes over time. And I ended up trying to find work that I found more interesting. I ended up working for the railway at the age of 22. I moved up to northern BC. I was raised in Surrey. I grew up there. Moved to northern BC. I was in Terrace, Smithers, and I loved that area. And I enjoyed my time on the railway. It was kind of an adventure as a young guy, right? Hanging off the side of rail cars and driving trains like in the middle of the wilderness, seeing all the wildlife and the scenery. It was pretty cool experience. And but I pictured myself working there for the rest of my life, right? Like I had really good seniority, and I had a lot of guys telling me, "You've got it made, kid. You got like the golden ticket. You're just gonna ride this till the end of your career." And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this for the next 40 years or 30 years. I don't want to just do the same thing, ride the same stretch of track every day for 30 years of my life. And I remember thinking, like, I feel like I've got gifts and talents that could be used in other ways that I wouldn't be fulfilling my potential if I didn't use those and pursue something more challenging, more meaningful for me. So I ended up going back to college at the age of 29, left the railway, and I did my business degree with in accounting at Okanagan College, where you are there in Kelowna.
Yeah.
And took me down a totally different path. I got into the CPA program, and so that takes us to the sort of more recent change where this is where my life really started to change. And that was where, so when my wife and I have 3 little girls, and my youngest Annika was born through just a little over 3 years ago. And I remember that being a pivotal moment for me, a pivotal moment of change in my life, where I decided to take 3 months of pat leave. And I was also preparing for this final CPA exam, which is a really hard 3-day exam. Like it's a beast, and everybody knows it. And so I was like, do I really want to be like juggling work, study, kids, a new baby, all this stuff? And I thought, no. So my wife and I agreed it would be great if I took some time off. And so I took some time off that summer after my daughter was born. It was really cool to have that time with them. But you know what? After I finished that exam, I remember having some time, like no more studying, right? Just at home with family. I had about a month. And I remember just taking a good hard look at my life and thinking about like, was I happy with it? Because I had spent 6 years in school, right? I went back to school, did my 4-year accounting degree, and went to the CPA program. And I just had my head down, right? Like blinders on to the rest of the world, just doing this. And I never took time to ask, what am I happy with my life? Am I fulfilled with what I'm doing? Am I heading to where I want to head? And so I finally started to ask those questions, because I had a moment to breathe and think that I hadn't had in years. And so I remember this vivid vision of my future. I remember thinking what my life's going to look like. I'm going to have 3 girls that I'm going to be taking all over the place to their different activities. I'm going to be working in a cubicle in a job I don't really care for, I'm not passionate about. I'm going to be unhealthy, overweight. I'm going to be rushing home to take my kids to all their activities in our minivan. And there'd be no time for me. There'd be no time for me to, pursue the things I'm passionate about, to have the impact I want to have in the world. And obviously, like, I love my wife. I love my kids. And first and foremost, I'm a father and a husband. But I also think most of us have this desire to have a greater impact in the world, right? And to feel like we're leaving some kind of legacy, and when we're gone, we can look back and say, I had an impact. And I had that kind of a wake-up call that I wanted that, and I wasn't living the kind of life that I was going to look back on and be proud of, that I was going to get to the end of my life and be filled with regret. And so I remember just getting very hungry, right? I was just like, I gotta figure something out. I gotta change something. I don't know what, but I need to change something. And so I was just like, I don't know. I was looking for something, right? And I remember my wife's friend was over for dinner for Thanksgiving that year, so 2018, I believe it was, and she recommended a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And I, like I said, I was looking for something, and I bought this book because she'd raved about it, and I just devoured it in like a few days. And it was all about starting a morning routine, right? And getting up early, having that time to yourself. And it was exactly what I needed. You know, like when something happens in your life, it's exactly what you needed at that moment in time. And that's what it was for me. I needed discipline. I needed to build better habits. I needed time in solitude to think. I needed to, so, you know, that book was all about like establishing routines like journaling and meditation and exercise, and there's 6 parts to it, but reading personal development books. And so it got me started on this whole personal development route, which I'd neglected. I'd never really been a personal development junkie up to that point in my life. I just kind of neglected it. I was like this guy who, you know, like I think a typical guy, right? I would get motivated sometimes. Maybe I'd work out for 3 or 6 months, and then I'd give up and get lazy for a while, and then get motivated again, go back. But I was inconsistent. I wasn't driven. I was by no means living up to my potential. And so that vision I had of my future, knowing I wanted to change it, knowing I wanted to have a greater impact, that like 3 years ago put me on this path that I'm on now, this journey of sort of self-discovery, I guess you could call it, personal development, just figuring out what I really wanted for my life. And so what came from that was, you know, I started to ask those questions, like you as a coach, I'm sure you help people figure out who they are, right? Who are you deep down at the soul level, at your core? Like what do you really want for your life, and what impact you want to have in the world? And so I started to ask those questions, and I realized like whatever I was doing wasn't doing it for me. And so I started to make those changes. I started to think about what a future that I would be excited about would look like. And, you know, that took me down this path of, well, it took me into coaching. It took me into the fitness challenge that I did, that I'm sure we'll talk about. And it took me into a life of impact, right? For me, it's never been about wanting to be a coach. It's never been about wanting to host a podcast, say I do that, or do YouTube videos. Like all these to me are tools. They're tools for impact. And the impact that I want to have is I want to reach guys that were like me in my younger years, distracting themselves from reality, you know, and not even realizing it, right? That they're, say, watching Netflix all the time, playing video games, like looking at porn, whatever it is, not working on themselves. And the thing is, one message I really want to leave here, and I'll end my rant here, is that, you know, that distracting yourself from your own life, your real life, is fun, and it seems like there's no cost to it, right? It seems like, whatever, it doesn't matter. But then there's a huge cost to it, because 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you don't get that time back, you know, and things compound, right? Like compound interest is something people learn about, savings, but we don't learn about compound personal development, right? And it's a real thing. It is. And so, you know, I got started in my journey very late, right? I was 34 years old when I really started to make these changes. So I want to wake guys up when they're 20, 25 years old, 30 years old, and not have to, you know, look back and say, I wish I would have done things differently. But, you know, it's always better late than never. It doesn't matter if you're 50, 60, 70 years old. It's never too late to make a change in your life.
That's like, out of everything you've said, we could just end the show right now and be like, you've got all the gems, we've delivered them, this is great. So I think the one thing to like dive into a little bit there around that, and there's other pieces I want to like touch base on, is that age component, right? Like where I see a lot of people is like the younger generation is looking at it in a new light and like always searching for what's that impact, what's that value. But I think there's some real value in having to go through the shit of it a little bit to come out to the other side, to have that appreciation for it, right? Being in your mid 30s, taking so long, I laugh, like, because I'm 41 and I'm still just trying to figure out who I want to be when I grow up, right? Like I used to say that all the time as a defense mechanism because I had no idea, right? But now it's like, it's a journey, it's an excitement. Be like, I don't know who I'm going to be next year, but I'm excited to meet them, right? And the same thing, it's just like, you're not young. Like reality is like, we could live to 100, we're not even at the halfway mark yet, right? So
Totally.
imagine how much more time we could use all that knowledge to deploy and take it and like actually have a strong hard look at like what we don't want anymore, because knowing what you don't want and experiencing that is just as powerful, I think, if not more powerful than saying this is what I do want, right? How do you shrink your bubble to kind of niche down to the person you truly are supposed to become?
Yeah, that's such an important point you brought up, like this figuring out who you're not. And I think, I don't know if I would go back and change anything about my life, to be honest, right? Like I said, my time on the railway, my time pursuing accounting and going back to school, like all this was, even the 6 years of school and doing the CPA program, like it was proving to me what I was capable of, like writing that 3-day exam and realizing I can do hard things, I can do challenging things. And and a lot of us, like maybe it's working in a job you really don't like, but you persevered, you got through it, you did what you had to do. And we can build on those victories, right? You can look back and take a lot of good from that.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like there's a book called Values Factor that I've referred to a number of people in the past, and in part of the book, it's all about like figuring out what your values are based on your experiences and what comes up for you. But part of it talks about just that idea where like you might not be in the ideal job or situation that you have, but how do you relink instead of going, oh God, I hate getting up for this, like how do you relink this to going, I get to get up for this because it sets me on the path of where I want to be. I know where I want to be, and I've already identified this is on my path, so I better learn how to enjoy it and make the most out of it, right? So it doesn't turn into a trap, but it turns into a springboard. And I think that is a really beneficial component, because I know there's a ton of people out there that do not enjoy what they do on their day-to-day, and trying to put their 2 feet on the ground in the morning is like one of the hardest pieces to start their day. And what I think both of us want everybody to be excited about their day. It doesn't mean you're going to be happy necessarily in the small moments, but if you can be excited and have some joy throughout the whole at the bigger picture, and realize that these hard steps that you're taking today make you the person who's going to be able to achieve that next thing. It's just, kind of adding to your well of experience. So you can go back, like you say, it's like you did the hard things. You know you can do something hard. And you also now know that you can do something and still go, oh, I made a decision. Now I've learned a whole bunch of things. And actually, I'm going to change the way that I'm going, right? Like you invested a lot of time going down the accountant route, but you still were able to make the next pivot to go, it's a tool that I have now in my belt, but it's not the one I want to swing all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I wanted to add to what you said there was like just seeing that growth along the way, like whether it's, maybe you're working to save money, or maybe you're whatever it is to do the thing you really want to do. And maybe you got to do it for a few years. But in the meantime, if you're learning, if you're taking courses, if you're getting stronger and in better shape, like you're building on those little victories, you're feeling better about yourself as you improve and as you grow. Like every one of us, I think, needs to see progress to feel fulfilled and feel happy.
Yeah, and to get that progress, like you actually kind of have to document your journey a little bit, right? Like it is so easy to be like, oh, I had this little win, and like 6 months from now when things go pear-shaped and it's really bad, be like, oh, my whole life is horrible. Be like, well, what about like 6 months of like little wins that you had versus like, yeah, you've had a hiccup. Yeah. Go back to the little win. Like it took you a long time to be able to even be the person to have a hiccup like this. Right. To me, it's that reframing component.
Yeah, such a good point. Funny you mentioned that, because I had actually just picked up my old journals from the last 3 years. I've journaled, like I never journaled in my life, and then I started doing it every day pretty much. And I picked up those journals from 2018, 2019, and looking back at where I was, and the journey that I've been on since, because I have those feelings. I have those feelings like nothing's going right for me. I'm not making progress like I want to. I didn't achieve this goal. And then you look back and like you said, documenting it, right? And that's why I'm a huge advocate of journaling, and just so that you can look back to see where you were, because it's so easy to forget.
Oh yeah, big time. And it is really powerful to go back and look at those things. I do like gratitude. I used to do on Facebook all the time, posting about my gratitude daily, but I keep it private now and write it in a book, and I write about what I've learned. And like just even going back over the last year, it's just like, it's been a lot to be grateful for, and like a lot of little things that I would have forgotten that within the day that I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember that. And it is nice to go back and look at it and remind yourself you can do the hard things.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome.
So I was going to talk, I wanted to poke at, because you've had two major career changes. Both careers would have looked at from like the outside world would have been like, dude, what are you doing? You're set.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to leave the union of the railway where you're set for life. And then like, now I'm going to be an accountant. And now you're off doing other things on top of that. Like, what was it like for you? Because I'm going to have to make a wild assumption here. There were some people that looked at you going, are you crazy? Like, do we need to call somebody? Like, what's going on?
Oh yeah, no, that's a very good assumption to make. That was very accurate. And there were plenty of people when I left the railway who told me I was an idiot, who told me I was crazy. And honestly, like, I think we all have to deal with that to some extent in our lives, because there's sort of this this cultural narrative, or narrative that we get told, that you go to school, you get a good job, you get married, you have kids, you buy the house with the white picket fence, or whatever that story is, right? It's different it's a little bit different for different people, but essentially there's this sort of a timeline that people are supposed to follow, and then there's expectations, right? You get into this sort of keeping up with the Joneses mindset when you do get that job, right? And then it's like, okay, I got to get a new truck, I got to get a new quad, I got to get a nicer house, all these things, right? That start to keep you in. Maybe you're unhappy, right? Maybe, and I want to go back to that point I made about that distraction, right? Distracting yourself from reality. I think so many people, they fill their lives with stuff and even busy activity, right? And they don't ever stop to really, just feel what are they feeling? Like, how are they feeling about life? And I think a little bit of solitude goes a long way, right? I had a lot of long nights on the railway, driving trains, through the middle of the night from Smithers to Prince Rupert, Smithers to Prince George. And I had a lot of time to think. And so in that way, that job was very good. It gave me a lot of time for introspection. And I guess what it came down to was, what these other people think of me, whether it's my parents, my friends, my family, or just random people I work with, their opinion of me and my life and what I'm doing with it is not going to matter in the big scheme of things, right? In the end, like, your family and friends, if they really care about you and love you, they're going to support you no matter what you do, right? And they're gonna believe that you're pursuing this for a reason. Other people, who cares what they think? And so for me, I remember I remember coming home, or not coming home. I got called for a trip. So on the railway, we never knew when we were going to work, right? We were randomly called. And this one night, I was expecting to go to work all day. It got pushed back. I got called in the middle of the night to go take a train to Prince Rupert, and I hadn't slept at all. And so I was going to go work for 10 or 12 hours and off no sleep. And it was a bad night. It was rough. And I finally got that train to Prince Rupert, and the taxi cab took us to the bunkhouse where we slept. And I remember walking into the bathroom at the bunkhouse and looking in the mirror, and I had these giant black bags under my eyes, and I looked like crap. Like, I looked like I was 50 years old, and I was 25 or 27 or whatever I was, 28, I guess. But I remember looking in the mirror and saying to myself, this isn't worth it. I'm never going to do this again. And I remember that being the moment where I said, I'm not doing that to myself. And this stuff had been building for a long time, right?
Yeah.
This desire to do something different, this, wanting to do more. And so I guess to get back to your question, there are a lot of people who question what I'm doing, but I would say that, if you got something inside of you, like calling you, driving you to want to do more, to do something different, I think you can't ignore that voice, right? I think that's the real you trying to yell out and get your attention. And the thing is, a lot of people suppress that voice. A lot of people suppress it with distraction, and they don't. And I think that those people, they get down the road and then they regret not making that change, right? They regret staying in that job that makes them miserable. I've seen a lot of people who rise to high levels in corporate finance, in union jobs, and yeah, they made crap loads of money and they bought all kinds of nice things, but they're not happy. They're miserable in their job, and and I think a lot of them look back on their life with regret and wish they would have done something different. So yeah, it was difficult for me. It probably delayed me making changes in my life, having people tell me that I'm an idiot or crazy, and it was challenging, right? We all have to overcome that. And, but you gotta listen to your gut. I know it's kind of a cheesy cliche saying, right? But when your gut is like screaming out and it's repeating on repeat all the time that you want to change, you want to do something different, you want more, then I think you have to find a way to do that. It might not mean quitting your job. It might mean, like for me, when I left the railway, I spent a year or 2 years taking part-time courses through online universities and proving to myself, like, do you really want this? Can you really do this? Can you quit your job and go back to school? And I had to prove that, because I wasn't ready to just quit on a whim and make the jump. So there's other ways of doing it, right? You don't have to change things overnight.
Well, I think that's a great little piece of your story to share there, right? Is like you can take that change in little bite-sized pieces. It's not an all or nothing. It's finding out the right pieces for you, and you needed to go prove to yourself. You went, hey, the real me is screaming, I don't know, and he doesn't know what I actually want yet, but we're willing to go take some little bites to get a taste, to be like,
yeah,
do I like this or do I not like this? It's like being a kid all over again, right? Like they put everything in their mouth. Why? Like, is it tasty? Is it not tasty?
Yeah.
And they move, like they're super quick at figuring out what they like and don't like. Then as we get older, for some reason, we decide that we can fill our mouth with the most disgusting things possible, and we won't spit it out. Be like, what happened there? Why did we stop being curious or start doing that to ourselves? It's usually just to appease an external factor.
That is such a great analogy. And something that came up for me when you were talking about kids is, I think in so many ways we could learn from our kids and be more like kids. And one of those ways is not caring what people think, right? Like my kids, 8, 6, and 3, they don't care what people think of them. Like they want to have fun. They want to talk to people. They're almost fearless in that way, right? Yeah. But then we get these society's expectations put on us and other people's expectations, and we become fearful of what they will think. And that is real. Like even for someone like me who's overcome that and done, what they thought was stupid, I had to overcome those feelings. We all have them.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Right. And it's interesting about that fear, right? Like, it brings up the same amount of fear and the same style of fear that we would have had like centuries ago running away from a saber-toothed tiger. And it's just not, right? Because our bodies are programmed to keep us safe. So this fear floods over us, not knowing what to do. Well, it must be telling us not to do this. And it's about learning that, taking that breath and going, am I running from a saber-toothed tiger, or am I putting that same value on somebody's opinion of me?
Yeah.
Are those two things the same? No. But that takes a lot of work, right? When you talk about doing the work, it's like, here's the secret. The work is never over, people. It's never over. Like, it doesn't matter how much work we do. Like, there's still a part of that that's still going to show up at the most obscure times, right? Like, we're always just chasing that next question or that next demon. There's always one more to go deal with.
Definitely.
So talk maybe a little bit about, around men's coaching and bringing out that fire, and then what does that look like for you? How are you going about, you don't have to maybe give away all the secret sauce, but what is it that you do to engage people to bring that inner voice of themselves out?
Yeah, so I don't mind sharing at all. Like, I know there's a lot of people that either can't afford coaching or aren't ready or don't want to get coaching. But for me, I can say that I changed my life by reading books, personal development books. And, I encourage other people to do that. But there's simple questions you can ask yourself. So one of the things that I do with my clients is right off the bat, we do an exercise called the life balance wheel, which is basically you draw a circle and split it up into a pie with 8 different sections. Are you going to grab one there? Looked like you were.
No, literally, I don't do this at all ever. So excuse the video. So
oh
that's
yeah,
my
yeah.
life circle down below my desk that I have there.
Yeah. So what I find is, a lot of people have never stopped and taken a look at like, how happy am I with the different areas of my life? And that's, I call it like a reality check, right? That kind of goes with the idea of, stop distracting yourself and let's look at your life. Let's get real with yourself and like, how happy are you in your relationship or lack thereof? Or how happy are you in your personal health, your spiritual health, your career, your finances, whatever those areas are for you. And then so that kind of gives people an overview of like, okay, what areas of my life do I actually want to even change? Like, where would I begin? Because I think people have an idea. Sometimes people will come to you and they'll say, I hate my job. I want to change careers, or, I want to change my health. But then oftentimes what you find is below the surface, there's something even deeper that they want to change even more. Right? And that's what I found with my clients is something comes up often in that exercise that they didn't even realize that they were unhappy in. Right.
Yeah.
And so just, I guess, writing out that wheel and splitting it up into 8 or 10 pie pieces and then giving each one a category and then ranking them on a scale of 1 to 10 and saying like, how happy am I with this area of my life? Right. Yeah. And then looking into what would changing that look like? Like, what would a 10 out of 10 life look like for my marriage, or a 10 out of 10 career satisfaction? Right. And then that I find starts to give people clarity on like, well, what do I actually want? Right. And so some of the other steps that I go through with clients are, so clarifying your values, right? Clarifying what your deepest values are. I'm sure that's something you're really familiar with. And I think that's something a lot of us have never done, right? We think we know what we care about. We think we know what we value. But oftentimes when you're going through this exercise, you realize like, I really care about this thing and I'm not living my life in alignment with that. A perfect example is like, say you tell people that my highest value is my family, right? A lot of people say that. And then does your life reflect that? Because for me, I could say it didn't. When I was working 40 to 50 hours a week and in school doing the CPA program and barely having time to spend with my kids, right? I would come home from work, I would do accounting homework all night. Was I really valuing my family, putting my family first when I said they were my highest value? Well, like when I looked at that, when I was asked that question for the first time in my life, I realized that I wasn't living out my values. So kind of clarifying what your top 3 values are, that's something I find really important. It's a wake-up call for a lot of people, and that can lead to dramatic changes in a person's life. And then, so from there, I would start to go to like, who do you need to be to live out those values? Like when you start to picture yourself living in line with those values that you just said were your top 3, like what does that person's life look like? What does it mean to put your family first if that's your highest value, right? And it's going to be different for everyone, but these are the kind of like hard-hitting, powerful questions that we need to ask ourselves, or we need to be asked by someone else. And then so from there, like after you sort of clarify your values and figure out who you would need to be to live out those values, the next step from there would be like, what's your vision for your life? What's the impact you want to have on the world and on the people around you? And that's where people really get excited and inspired to make change in their life. And what I would say is, a lot of people have asked me to be their accountability buddy or different things, and they've told me, I'm ready to make change in my life. I'm ready to start exercising. I'm ready to start changing this or writing every day. And then it doesn't stick, right? They say, I want to do this. I want to exercise every day. And then after 3 days or a week or a month, they stop. And the biggest reason for that is that people didn't connect to a powerful enough reason why they need to make that change or want to make that change. And so that's kind of the goal of my coaching is like, figure out what exactly do you want, right? Get to know yourself, like deep down, who you really are, what you really care about, what you really want. And then really get clear on like why it matters to you. Like if you were to live out that life, right? Live out those values, be that person that you envisioned and have that impact that you could have in the world. How would that make you feel, right? How would it make you feel if you could have this bigger impact on the world? And when later in life, when people are celebrating your 80th birthday, they're talking about the kind of person you were and the kind of things you did. what do you want them to be saying about you? And that really gives people the motivation and the inspiration they need to make a change. And those were the kinds of questions that did it for me. And for me, originally, it wasn't even working with a coach. It was answering these questions from a book or a questionnaire that I printed off. And so like change doesn't have to be really expensive. You don't have to spend a lot of money to start making changes in your life. Like you could literally just take out a journal or a piece of paper like this and go sit by yourself for an hour and start jotting down some thoughts on like these kind of questions. But one thing I would say is like get some space, get some quiet. Like we have so much sensory input in our lives, whether it's even just listening to audiobooks and music or like being on social media, the internet all day, checking our email every 30 minutes. Like we're bombarded with media, with different inputs. And most of us can't even find time for ourselves to really hear our own thoughts. And so there's a couple things I would recommend is if you're doing this on your own without a coach, I would recommend, Tony Robbins talks about getting into peak state, right? And I believe there's something to that, because when I told you that story about climbing that mountain when I was like 20 years old,
yeah,
I felt like after I learned about this, I feel like that in that moment I was in peak state. I just overcome something. I had this adrenaline. I felt inspired. And I think that, people are like hunched over a computer screen sometimes and they're like, oh, what do I want to do with my life? What are my values? And they're not coming at it from an energized, inspired place. So I would say, I would recommend if you're going to do this kind of an activity, find some space for yourself, like some solitude, and then also get yourself inspired. Like whether that's like rocking out to some music like you had at the intro to the show, like find something that inspires you, or then go climb, literally go climb a mountain. I'm telling you, there's nothing that will put you in a peak state like going and climbing, doing something difficult and reaping the rewards of that, like getting to the top of that mountain and looking around at everything below you. There's something powerful there. And when you go from that, like this energized, inspired state, to then answering these powerful questions, that's when you really start to look at your life differently. And so this is the kind of stuff I try to do with my clients. And I think in the future I see myself taking guys, like a group of guys, up a mountain, right, and doing this kind of work on the mountaintop. And so that is where I see my coaching heading in the future.
Yeah.
But for now, it's through conversations like this online. I forgot what your question was. Did I answer it?
Over and over. Like you just kept dropping insights left, right, center, and there. Like totally, like distractions when you're working on those things is like, first off, it doesn't need to be expensive to get started. You just need to get started. You can go pick a book. You can listen to Tony Robbins. There's a multitude of potential mentors out there that you can listen to their things for free and get some ideas. Yeah. Making that time, right? Committing to your morning routine, or whatever point that you have a routine that you invest in yourself. Like a big part of what I work with people is about like invest in yourself so you can fill your cup and you can serve from the saucer. That's so critical. And like go and do some hard things in a safe way, but like go do something that's hard for yourself physically, and take that time to get away when you're doing that reflection and that retrospective on yourself. It's like, you're right, go out in nature. Like there's a lot of studies that prove like the concept of a nature bath is for real, right? Just even walking down into the trees will change your state, right? And
totally.
I totally love the idea about peak state and shifting your energy. Is one of my mentors and coaches talked about how emotion is just really energy in motion. So like when you're hunched over and closed all up and you're going, why is me? Be like, my body language says, why is me? Or shoulders back, eyebrows up, be like, already like the energy just shifts. Totally. Magnitudes. I'm just pulling those shoulders back and even looking silly with your eyebrows up. It makes a big difference, right? I'm smiling, you're smiling. Yeah. We're moving now. Like we've got the energy to move. Go out there and do the hard. Ask yourself some hard questions. And if you're finding it hard to answer those questions, reach out to Tom. He'll hold you accountable. But yeah, man, like that was a lot of great information there. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And I look forward to seeing what you do when you start doing these mountain climbing expeditions to get men into some really awesome spots.
Yeah, I hope to make that a reality.
Well, you know how I said at the top of this that I'd look up and be like, it's 40 minutes?
Yeah.
I hope you have a few more minutes. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your 0 to 90 journey that you've wrapped up before this summer started.
I'd love to. I got time for sure.
All right, let's do it, man.
If you're game, I'm game.
I'm game. I got. It's only making spaghetti after this, so that can wait a few minutes.
So I guess I should start back 3 years ago, where I kind of started to change my life. I started this morning routine. I started to exercise. Most days it was at least 20 minutes, but I set a minimum of it was at 1.5, 6, or 7 minutes a day, right?
Yeah.
And I did it 7 days a week. I never missed a day. I think I missed 2 days in 2 years. Like, I was religious about it. And a lot of people ask questions or say things like, what's the point of working out for 5 minutes? It doesn't do anything. Or what's the point of doing, 5 push-ups? It doesn't do anything. The thing I would say to that is, like, people don't realize that it's building that muscle, that habit muscle, that you show up and you do it every day, no matter what. And so for me, even though I wasn't in like the greatest shape when I was doing this, I was building this muscle, this showing up every day routine that I did it no matter what. And so I wanted to give that background, right? Because when I did this 90-day Slacker to Spartan challenge, it started April 15th of this year. It wasn't like I'd never exercised, like I'd never developed a habit. Like, this was a 3-year journey for me, or 2.5 years leading up to this. And so I want to encourage anybody, if you are wanting to make a change in your life, like, don't do the same thing people do over and over again and fail. Like, don't say I have to go to the gym 5 days a week for an hour a day. Give yourself like that. Okay, maybe that's your A+ grade, right? But what is your pass? Like, what's your C+? Can you get your C+ every day or every week? Yeah. At least, right? And then if you've got the time and the energy, do more. But get at least that bare minimum. And so for, like, I would say, start out with like doing 5 push-ups. I heard of a guy who changed his life doing 1 push-up a day, because who stops at 1, right? Who stops?
Well, when I'm hearing this, and to like what you're really training is your head, right? It's that spirit and that commitment to self. You're going, well, I made a commitment and I saw that commitment through, right? It doesn't matter. The commitment doesn't care about how big or what you're doing. What you're listening for all the time is, am I a person that keeps my commitments to myself, or am I a person that doesn't and then disappoints myself? And by keeping it small at the start, it's like that's the real muscle that you're building up, so that when you go do like a 0 to 90 or a 75 hard or some other crazy thing, you're not starting at 0. You're already going, well, I've spent 2 years keeping commitments to myself, so now it's time to see what I can do to build the other muscle. Yeah,
so true. And then you program your mind in such a way that you believe yourself. You trust yourself when you say something. When you say to yourself, I'm doing this for 90 days, your body knows, well, he says we're doing it, so we're doing it, because he doesn't lie about this kind of thing. Whereas if you continually set, and this, I'm talking from experience, because if you continually set goals that are too much, and you fail, and you set this ambitious goal to work out 7 days a week, and you fail over and over again, you will start to like not trust yourself. And it's very important to build that trust. And maybe it takes 30 days, maybe it takes 90 days of showing up every day, but do that, right? Set the bare minimum and always show up. And so that's kind of what took me to this Slacker to Spartan in 90 days. Well, I guess a little bit of other background information was I got inspired to so this is kind of interesting, I think, for people to hear, is like, I'd never done any kind of race in my life, right? Since like grade 6 track and field. I played hockey when I was a kid, but I didn't do anything competitive outside of that. And so here I am, 34 years old or 35, and I decided to sign up for the Iceman Challenge in Prince George. It's this multi-sport skiing, skating, running, swimming race here that's done in the middle of winter. And it ended up being the coldest day they've ever done it. It was like below -20. And so I was training for this thing, right? And this was part of that, like, envisioning who you want to be and like the person you want to be. And I pictured myself doing something like this because I had wanted to do it like 10 years prior and never did it. It was one of those things I said I'd get around to. And so this was in, it was February 2019. I signed up to do this race, and I've been training for it for a few months. And I struggled, man. Like, I struggled to complete that race, but I did it, right? I made it. And that was this incredible feeling of accomplishment. Like, I was literally in tears when I got home from having completed it because like, I had told myself for years I could do things like that if I wanted to, right? But I had started to even doubt whether that was possible, you know? Like, I started to doubt whether I could actually do it because maybe it's just something I'm telling myself, right? So that I don't have to experience failure. And so to do it and to struggle and to achieve it was a huge like game changer for me. And so that having that experience inspired me to do more, right? To continually challenge myself. And so over the past few years, I've done various races and things. So last year I signed up to do 50-kilometer Spartan Ultra Beast in the Rocky Mountains, and it got canceled due to COVID. And then this year I signed up to do it again, right? But I thought, okay, how can I have an impact, right? Like, rather than me just doing this race and continuing to train on my own, and like, how can I inspire other people to make a change in their life? And that's where I came up with this idea of Slacker to Spartan in 90 days. And the name comes from, like, the slacker part comes from the fact that, you know, after COVID hit and everything was canceled, all races were canceled, it was hard to find inspiration to keep doing things, to keep pushing myself. And so I'd really been pretty lazy that winter. And by lazy, I mean I was doing the bare minimum. I was doing like the C+ passing grade, right? Like, exercise for 5-10 minutes. Okay, I did something. Yeah. Right? I get to check off the box on my habit tracker. But I was like, here I am. Like, I'm trying to coach men on living up to their full potential. And I don't even feel like I'm being honest and authentic. Like, I'm not even living up to mine. So I thought something's got to change. I want to have an impact. So this is perfect, right? It was like 93 days before the Spartan race. And so I thought, this is perfect. I'll do this 90-day challenge. I'm going to exercise every day for like at least an hour. Most days it was close to an hour at least. And I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And I'm going to get ready to do this 50-kilometer obstacle course race. And so, yeah, I shared that whole journey on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And, you know, you saw that, I guess. That's why I'm invited onto your show. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was, you know, one of the best things I've done in my life was doing that challenge. And, you know, it's funny. I've had, I would say, you know, at least 6 or more people contact me privately, maybe up to 10 people. Like, quite a few people have contacted me privately and said that I inspired them to start getting in shape, and they bought a kettlebell and they're working out every day and things like that. Like that, that was what really did for me. Like, even people that I know personally that are close friends or family who told me it had an impact on their life. And so, you know how earlier I said, like, all these things, coaching, YouTube videos, podcasts, all that kind of stuff is like, they're tools to impact people. And I thought, like, what's another tool I could use to impact people who are never going to be a coaching client, people who are, you know, don't have the financial resources to do that. Like, how can I impact them? And so I thought, why don't you lead by example, Tom, rather than just talking about it? And I see a lot of coaches posting inspirational quotes on social media all the time. And I thought, like, what if I, like, walk the walk, right? Like, and show people how I'm living my life, what I'm doing. And so for me, it started out with the Spartan race, right? Training for the Spartan race. And halfway through, it got canceled. And so I was like, well, what do I do now? I'm not going to stop. I'm in the middle of this challenge. And so I came up with a replacement challenge. It ended up being it was a 45K run in the mountains near Jasper, the Skyline hike. And then I also, I was training with a kettlebell. I got really into kettlebell training throughout this challenge or just before it started. And I highly recommend it if you're looking to get in shape. You don't want to go to the gym. You want a home gym. Buy a kettlebell and start training in your own home. It's something the Russian military uses. It's something from the old Soviet era, and it's super effective. And it's becoming more and more popular in North America. So highly recommend kettlebell training to anybody. I absolutely love it. I still do it, 3 days a week, at least every week. And so, yeah, I went through this 90-day challenge of like weight training with kettlebells, running, swimming. I was doing like different stuff to change it up, to get myself in the best shape I could and to prepare for that race. And then when it ended up not being that race, I still was like, what can I do to get in the best shape of my life? And then it became, it was kind of interesting that once you're sharing a journey with people, you feel this pressure to show up and to make it something worth tuning into, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to half-ass this thing. I got people looking at my posts every day, reading my posts. So I was writing in like sort of an inspirational message every day or most days with my post to encourage people and to get them thinking, right? Asking those coaching style questions about what do you really want for your life? Like, what could you change in your life if you committed to an hour a day for 90 days? And so many people think it's like change is too hard. It would take too long, right? Like it's going to take me years to change my life. And my goal was, so I posted a before picture, right? Before pictures and then after 90 days. And my whole goal here was to show people like what is possible in 90 days. And so you can literally go on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I have every single day posted what I did. I have the links to the YouTube videos. I have exactly my workouts every day. And you can do that. You could like literally follow that routine if you want. And you can see the results. Like, judge for yourself what I was able to do in 90 days, to go from where I was to where I got to. And I know for myself, like I was in the best shape of my life at the end of that 90 days. And I was feeling incredible. Like I felt so strong and fit. And, we ended up running 49K in the mountains with my sister and her fiance. They were kind of my training team for running. And then, I set my own kettlebell challenge because Spartan's not just a run, right? It's an obstacle course that challenges
and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, well, run's not quite enough. So I found this kettlebell challenge online. Strong First has this kettlebell certification program. So I set the goal of accomplishing that. And yeah, so I kept going. I kept going through the 90 days, even though Spartan's canceled. It was still the 90-day Slacker to Spartan challenge, and I followed through with it. And like I said, it's one of the best things I've done in my life, as far as personal development goes, as far as having an impact.
I love it, man. Thanks for sharing that. It was awesome watching your journey through it all. And then, the thing that got me the most about your journey is like, then it was 91 out of 90. And I think you got up to like 95 was the last one I think I saw in the series. But like you went more. You did this whole concept of you got it. No, you're just like, well, who stops at one? Who stops at one push-up? Or like who stops at 90 after they've done that now, right? Like that's it's a testament of the commitment levels that you're bringing to yourself. And that you made a mention about like change is hard and change is slow. Be like, yes, and you compound it over time, like you talked about at the very beginning of all this. It's compound interest. If you compound that change daily at that 1 to 5%, watch out what you can accomplish in 90 days, 365 days, 3,065. Right? Like there's so much that compounding can add on to. Very like. You'll undersell what you can do in a year and wildly underestimate what you can do in 10.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So right.
Well, my friend, now we're definitely at the 55-minute mark, so I want to be respectful of your time. You know what, Tom? This has been a great episode. I'm really glad that you've been able to come on and share some of this stuff. What's next, and like, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, so you can connect with me on pretty much any social media, Instagram, Tom L Coaching, Facebook, Tom L Coaching, and LinkedIn. You can look up my name. I'm fairly active on all of them. I haven't been in August because my wife and I took the month off to spend time with family and had a lot of outdoor adventures, which has been amazing. And that's why I've been a bit quiet. But yeah, thank you for mentioning the fact that I went over the 90 days because I still haven't stopped, just so you know. I've taken maybe 2 days off since the end of that challenge. And, a lot of that was like some of our exercise was paddling 20 or 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers a day at Myrtle Lake, different kind of workouts. But yeah, still pushing hard every day. So, but you asked about, you can get a hold of me, direct message me on any of those social media platforms. I'm even on Twitter. I barely just started, but Tom L Coaching there as well. And, or you can email me at tomlcoaching@gmail.com. And as far as what's coming next, I'm kind of, at a pivotal moment again in my life, as far as like, what am I moving towards? What am I doing? Because I keep going back to that impact, right? Like, how can I have the most impact? And so for me, it's still moving forward with one-on-one coaching. That's one of my favorite things. I love it. I love the impact you can have with a person working one-on-one. But it's also like, what can I do beyond that? And so I'm exploring a bunch of different things. I'm exploring the potential for a podcast type show like that. And I'm also, like I said, looking at the mountain excursions with a group of guys in person. And so I'm exploring a bunch of different things, but I will definitely be keeping people in touch. If I'd love it if you enjoy this conversation, follow me on whatever social media platform you prefer, and I'll be posting inspirational content, tips, strategies to make real change in your life. Like not just inspirational quotes, but like real things that will make a difference. And yeah, just to help you unlock your full potential. And I'm a men's coach. I work primarily with men, but I'm just trying to change anybody's life who wants to make a change. So that's my goal. And the other thing I guess I'll mention is, right now it's a crazy time in our world. And the other thing I'm working on is just becoming more involved, more like standing up for freedom and speaking about issues that matter to me. So that's something I'm becoming more active in. And yeah, so it's trying to figure out like what's the way that all that meshes together for me in the future. But yeah, it's been a challenging time for everybody the last year and a half. And I know for me it's like, I've been pretty like consistent and on the path, and and then lately I've been thrown off course a little bit, and so I'm starting to relate more to the people that have had a really difficult time during COVID, and and it's been challenging, but tough times don't last, tough people do is a saying I love. I think there's a lot of truth to it.
I agree with that statement for sure, my friend. All right, so to wrap up the show, we have the last question. So I've got a time machine. We're going to hop in it. We get to go back in time. We're going to see your younger self, and you get to give him one piece of advice. And it can't be like lotto numbers or anything like that. So what would it be?
It would be something along the lines of all this stuff you're doing, all this stuff you're spending your time on that you think matters, doesn't. The video games, the professional sports that you are so crazy about, the TV series you're obsessed with, like all that stuff that you think matters doesn't matter. And it's a distraction from what you could really be doing with your life, meaningful stuff that you would really look back on and be proud of. And so I would say, stop distracting yourself with stuff that doesn't matter, and and think about how you're going to look back on your life at the end of it and what you want that life to look like. That's what I would say.
Powerful stuff, man. Love it.
Thanks.
All right, Tom. So thank you so much for being part of episode 54 of the LiveCast Conversations With. This has been a great conversation. And to everyone else, we will be back next Wednesday. Remember, I want you to find one thing to push yourself out of your comfort zone this week. What's going to be your little challenge and commitment to yourself? Till then, we'll talk to you all later.
Thank you for having me.